I bid you welcome once again to the program this morning. And like I said earlier on, I have Doc in the studio and I also have Blessing who will join us, like Evelyn normally calls us the Three Musketeers. We're back again to start your week for you. Good morning to you, Blessing.
Good morning, Priya. I don't think I like musketeer. It makes it sound as if we're mischievous people, but we're here and we're a crew just to spark up conversations that will lead to a change. It's good to see the latest version of you this Monday.
Always good
and also
to
to
see
see
you.
Doctor who's looking so good. He's looking dapper. You need to share that secret with me. I've been appealing to you. What do I need to do? Do I need to bring my village people to appeal? So that you can cut the soap for me?
Well, I wish I had a soap. We
All
would
right,
have shared
now.
it here in the show.
Okay, great. And now let's move on to stories. That's insight on what made the news this morning. Let's begin with President Bola Tinubu in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, to participate in the African Heads of State Energy Summit, which starts today, January 27, 28, 2025. Now, Blessing, I remember that during the Abu Dhabi Week of Sustainability, when Mr. President was there, most of the conversation centered around energy development, clean energy, and all of that. So is this like a part two of the conversation back here in Africa? Or where exactly are we heading? Are we taking, do you think we're taking this thing about clean energy seriously? Do we like want to go completely green energy?
Well, it's not just about green energy. If you like, you can call this the part two, but it's also a time for Africa to have discourse regarding energy access in Africa, because this is put together by the African Development Bank Group and also the World Bank. So it's holding in Tanzania, and this is a time where heads of state leaders in Africa will come talk about how they can improve on electricity access, because the dream is to provide at least 300 million people in Africa with electricity access, and that's by the year 2030. Because Africa, as at 2022 and even up to 2024, the statistics still shows that about 600 million people, maybe even more, because when it comes to data, sometimes there is that issue or problem of having authentic data that represent the current state of things. So about 600 million people are still without access to electricity. And for Nigeria, almost 40%, because even last year, 2024, the Minister for Power was talking about how almost 40% of Nigeria's population still do not have access to electricity. So this summit is to talk about all of the issues regarding electricity access, clean energy. President Bola Tinubu there will be presenting Nigeria's energy strategy there. We hope to hear what he has planned or what the administration has planned so that energy access can be improved. What they also have for clean energy and a lot more. So this is like taking it home. Let's address the peculiar issues to Africa. At the Abu Dhabi Forum, it was more like a global forum, global discourse, but this is tailored towards the need of Africa.
I see. And if Mr. President is going to be presenting Nigerian energy strategy at Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, I was expecting that we would have had such presentation right here in Nigeria with Nigerian stakeholders, including members of parliament, and that particular strategy laid down on paper for us to know the direction that we are taking ourselves, given the fact that when it comes to energy, industrialization of Africa, and of course, specifically Nigeria, lies on it. So I'm going to bring in Doc into this conversation. The energy strategy paper of Nigeria, Mr. President, is that it?
Well, I think we already know what is in view for us, the transition to clean energy, and according to the document that Mr. President has been sharing, will eventually get to its climax, crescendo at 2060. So, which is, of course, a whole lot of gap. And I think, for me, it's understandable. There's a whole lot of peculiar challenges that indeed Africa face once it comes to the issue of clean energy. We must not be talking about what advantage clean energy will produce without necessarily also focusing on its costs. Because the big problem in Africa as we speak really right now, apart from the fact that we're dealing with issues about electricity generation, we're also dealing with the issue of transmission, issue of distribution, with obsolete infrastructures and technology. And this is even the bigger challenge, that even if you're going to invest so much money in generating clean energy, how do you distribute it? It's a whole lot of challenge. Up till this morning, I still read on our own community forum from my own village, where people are talking about how to have access to transformers that DISCO cannot provide. And the communities are pulling money together to buy transformers to be able to connect to electricity. All these are the real issues that Africans face. And so I am expecting that as we sit down in Dar es Salaam, these 3 days, that the African head of states also must look inward and be realistic in making promises to the world in terms of getting involved so deeply in the conversation. And one would hope that COP18 in Paris, which actually had promised that, of course, we're going to move into this area of clean energy, would have thought about Africa in terms of investment. But that has since been jettisoned. And I guess that's one reason why Donald Trump recently said in his inaugural address that the Paris Agreement was lopsided. So that lopsidedness, Africa must factor it into their conversation. And we must not be in a hurry to impress anybody in the world. People talk about the carbon emission story. We emit less of carbon compared to any people in the world. Europeans that are emitting carbons and are destroying the environment, they should actually be paying for their contribution to the degradation of African environment because of their technology, which of course they are not willing to do. And that's the kind of conversation that Africans should be pressing forward. We are not too much endangered as they are. And therefore, I don't think it's an urgent requirement for us to leave what we have and transition into what we don't have. So Africa must, as a matter of necessity, think strategically, put their head on the ground, and not think with another man's head.
I was going to think that, or I was thinking rather that you would have asked that they put their heads on the table, but since it's on the ground, maybe to make the movement faster. Because I like what you said, Doc. There seems not to be that honesty with reality, with the challenges that Africa is faced with, or what the core issues for now are. I think that the issue of transiting to clean energy is a far-fetched thing right now, given the fact that Africa is still grappling with the issue of electricity access. If as basic as that, Africa is still challenged, heavily challenged with that, then how are we talking about transiting to clean energy? So it should be first thing first. Doc would sometimes say, let's reach for the low-hanging fruit. So the low-hanging fruit here would be to generate power that perhaps may not exactly be clean energy or sourced from clean energy. The ones that we can source here, we have power sources that can give us that power sufficiency or energy sufficiency that Africa needs. If we can concentrate on that, and this time around, be actually patriotic to African nations, patriotic to African continent, because we see a lot of sabotage happening in the industry. It is not peculiar to Nigeria. For Nigeria, we know the issues that have bedeviled the power industry for lots of years. Billions of dollars have been invested in that industry. Even with the privatization, one would have thought that, oh, it was good news, that would have taken care of the problem. But even the private companies that bought the distribution company still have challenge with investing, putting back money into the system. Now, Doc mentioned the fact that communities still have to purchase transformers by themselves. That ought not to be. It's a private business. So if you it's like you purchasing mast for telecom companies to say, oh, so that you can provide coverage for my area. I think it's similar to that. So I wonder sometimes, If the job of NEC is just to regulate tariff, or there are core issues within the industry that NEC should also be attending to, ensuring that stakeholders live up to their responsibilities, this is the way to go before we get to the stage of energy transition, which we have the resources for. But if we cannot tackle the immediate ones, enabling that our national grid doesn't keep collapsing, enable that those in the rural areas who do not have electricity access have it, and ensuring also that the critical infrastructure that we need to absorb all that we are generating, transmit and distributing is there. Then if we're talking about clean energy, it's just like we're paying lip service and just wanting to talk, so it's not as if we're missing out on what's trending. Okay,
before I let you go into the next story, I would like to also chip in that in 2050, come 2050, Nigeria is going to be the third most populous country in the world. And all these conversations we are having about energy or building infrastructure, whether in our educational sector or in our health sector or in other critical sectors in our economy, Nigeria, we don't seem to be putting that plan, laying that foundation so that when 2050 comes, we will be prepared so that we will not have infrastructures or public facilities that are so inadequate to take care of the current population. Even currently, as we speak now, you can't take care of the current population on the ground. And if we are not prepared for 2050, I don't think we'll be heading anywhere meaningful. Blessing.
Well, if you're talking about 2050, it's even good news for Nigeria because the president of Nigeria has even pushed it further to 2060. When the world is talking about transiting fully to clean energy by 2030, you remember that at the Abu Dhabi summit, the president said for Nigeria, the target is 2060. So we still even have 10 years more to play with. It's not even 2050. But that was on a lighter note. But I think that more than lip service should be paid to this. First of all, funding is very key. So if at the global summit, much talk has been about reducing carbon emission and also helping African countries that are somewhat feeling the impact of the carbon emission generated elsewhere, that's conversation. Because if someone has made a promise to you, except you hold them accountable, chances are it is at their discretion or when they're willing to give to you what they promised that they will give to you. So Africa has to make that conversation a front burner issue, so that the West and countries that have pledged to that funding will make commitments to it. But on its own end, there must be a plan to ensure that as this fund comes, this is what we intend to put it in. And Africa should also show some seriousness that even without a fund, this is what we are doing on our own path, and not just waiting for funding to come and then was scattering. I use the word scattering those funds because it's as if there is no. You can't be doing too many things at a time. You can't be chasing too many things at a time. There should be clear-cut strategy plan. Let's know what the short-term plan is. Let's know what the mid-term plan, what the long-term plan. So for every funding, for every investment that Africa is pursuing, if we're saying for the now till the next 5 years, this is what we plan to do regarding having sufficient off-grid solution, creating an energy mix that will make us sufficient in energy. This is what we plan to do. If we're saying that, and it should not just be on paper, we're seeing work being done. Because I'm happy that this time around, the president is not going alone. He's going with the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. He's going with the Minister of Power. They're all going to be in his entourage. So those people should be the ones to broker the deals for investment in the power sector in Africa. But there should be a clear-cut plan. We know what's happening 10 by 10, and there should be strong monitoring to ensure that this process is carried out.
Yeah, but I think one other issue that must also have to be dealt with in terms of African really moving ahead in this direction, there are two issues that are of prime importance that Africa must deal with. The first is the weak institutional framework, which I have already alluded to. Take, for example, in Nigeria, we have a NEC that cannot really buy, and cannot even back, let alone buy it. And this is a huge challenge. I remember when Fashola was the Minister of Power, at a certain point he had come on air to say to Nigeria, well, if you don't have a meter in your place, don't pay electricity. And up to today, I can't see those rules enforced. Because actually it would have been the responsibility of the discourse to ensure that there's massive investment in that sector. of your electricity. In terms of consequences for things not done, Africa is weak. So the regulatory framework is also not strong enough. And I think one thing to also do is to ensure that we have a strong regulatory framework so that even the private people that are bringing in money into the environment, their fund is guaranteed and secured. And of course, there's opportunity for them to also profit. I can't forget, somebody told me in March 2022 in Dubai and said to me, the energy market can be much more lucrative than the telcos if the right things are done in terms of creating that ecosystem where private fund had to come in. But you see, electricity for us is taken like a security matter, and therefore you feel that you don't want the private sector to play so much part in it. And therefore, government is holding on to it, and with a huge inefficiency within the system. That's why you're seeing that the reforms are really not producing the right result. So decentralization will be quite critical, that everybody not necessarily need to be on a national grid to be able to get electricity. So individual can sell electricity, and this will make it a lot in abundance. Right. That's when. How can Africa also gather around themselves to see where do we have the resource that we can actually channel such that everybody is not going to be investing in infrastructure? Take, for example, if Nigeria finds its acts right, then we can begin to supply energy to our neighbors in West Africa. And imagine Egypt doing the same for North Africa, and South Africa doing the same for Southern Africa. So African countries, the smaller countries in Africa, will need to be investing so much in infrastructure that are quite very expensive. That's one side of it on regulation. There's also another side to it, which is capacity building. We must not pay lip service to raising enough capacity or human ability to tackle the issue of even greening the environment. Right now, I'm yet to see universities in Nigeria, for example, or in Africa, where green energy is studied as a course on its own.
I think it's really going to take a long time for us to arrive at that.
No, we don't need to. The world is moving.
The reason why I said that, the reason why I said that,
you see,
even locally,
when we are looking at 2060, just let me put this thought. When you are looking at 2060, of building a transition from the conventional energy mixes, and you're now saying, okay, you want to get a clean energy by 2060. That's about
35 years
from now. We should be building capacity so that we're not going to be absolutely dependent on the West or Asia to drive that process. So I'm expecting that as we're having this conversation, that there should be design. You see, somebody is in the electrical department, but yes, you just infuse one course there and call it green energy course. There should be a kind of a holistic approach to compartmentalize this entire conversation into a course or a department in our university system where we can build capacity so that as we are moving and evolving, we're not over-relying on the human capital from other clients, but we can have dependence on our people who are doing research and pioneering research in that direction.
All right, Doctor, I get that. I remember very vividly during the previous administration, not really the previous administration, during the infantile stage where Nigeria was progressing democratically and in terms of governance, when the issue of local government studies came upon. And I remember vividly about 4 universities were termed with that responsibilities. University of Lagos took over that of the southwestern part, University of Ife also, University of Benin, and Ahmadu Bello University Zaria in the north, in order for us to bring in local government from the grassroots, the study, so that people can study that in university and be equipped with the required knowledge to be able to channel and bring a governance at the ebb of society.